I guess I shall get started. Um,
So I just
Hello.
want to introduce what this is. So, because people who are watching my channel, this is very unusual. This is the first time. So,
Mhm.
um, I'm Nathan. This is Lubomyr. Lubomyr, invented this music, continuous music, which this channel is dedicated to, and I'm a student. And I want to have a series of discussions, interviews, depending on how you look at it. And this is the first one. And we should I want to talk about the start of this music and your like original musical background. So you've talked a bit about this before online, but not that much.
Hello, Nathan, and hello, everyone else. My full name is Lubomyr Melnyk, and I'm a Ukrainian pianist and composer. And Nathan stated that I uh, invented Canadian continuous music. Okay, I should and and I'd like to qualify that word because it's very it's of course uh, it's a word we generally use for people who discover some things. We say they invented it, etc. But I feel that in the uh, deeper sense, I did not invent this music. Um, in the deeper sense, I feel that I was led to it, and uh, so it's both. You're right, Nathan. I did invent it, but I was actually drawn to that position or pulled or pushed into that position of in quotes inventing it as a and slash discovering it.
Hmm.
And so I'll tell you a little bit about the start of everything. uh, I realize now that everything in my life, from the time I was a young child, from the time I was 3 years old, from the first time that I touched a piano. I believe I was 3 years old. And I simply came up to the piano and created a piece of music, like a real theme of music on it. My mother was very surprised and thought, okay, this boy is going to uh, learn piano. So, anyways, I did learn piano, and I studied the regular classical conservatory type of music and performance. So um, I played, uh, very, very, I would say like quite advanced pieces. And, and so, but just so that people understand, I was never a hot shot or a big star in the classical student world. You know, I was considered to be kind of like a hopeless case. Somebody. Well, okay, he's paying for lessons, so we let him go on. And so I actually, uh, quotes, graduated from the this school of music with quite like just enough to get through. And this was in spite of a lot of work, and not from laziness or carelessness. I generally practice very hard.
Yes, you are extremely passionate about the
Yeah,
classical music.
and I really had this dream that I would one day be able to play all the concertos and all this sort of stuff. And anyway, I mention this because um, I say this to the people who are also not hotshots. To pianists
Yeah.
who are not, yeah, like big stars, who are destined to have some sort of like a big career. Because in a sense, um, I want to give all of you a new outlook onto the piano and a new road of creation. And this is what continuous music is basically. It's it's a new language for the piano. I don't know how else to describe it, but it also involves a lot of new things or different things than what people are taught in the conservatory method.
Mhm.
And by the way, technically, both the classical and the continuous music do require quite a lot of technical work. And quite when it comes to things like scale work and when it comes to things like uh, finger exercises and that, there's a very close similarity. Uh, but then they diverge and separate.
Yes.
And the thing with the continuous music that I feel uh, is a very nice hope for the average pianist who is, quite good, but is never acknowledged or going to be on the stage at Carnegie Hall with an orchestra or something like that. So for these people, there is another voice of the piano, which I believe is accessible to everyone. And but with this preamble, I'd like to get into the actual.
I would like to slightly add to that preamble. So when I when I first had lessons with you, Lubomir, I like you started as a somewhat advanced classical pianist. I started as a dreadful, maybe not dreadful, but I just barely passed my grade five, so 1 mark fewer, and I would not have passed. And then I stopped having traditional lessons. I kind of played my own stuff for a year during the pandemic years. And then I found Lubomir's pieces and I bought the scorebook. Um, Actually, I should show this scorebook. So I bought this scorebook, the erase tape scorebook, and I learnt Pockets of Light, or at least I thought I learned Pockets of Light, and I sent Lubomir a recording, and it was dreadful. It wasn't dreadful, but it was it was pretty bad. Like I started.
It wasn't bad. Yes, that's the wrong word, Nathan.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
it wasn't bad playing. The point is that without instruction, one plays the notes wrongly. You're playing the right notes, but you're
Yes,
not playing the piece,
but
and you don't have control. You're not really. Um, it's sort of, let's put it this way. Analogy would be like playing the piece without instruction is like you got into a canoe and you have one paddle, right? And so you're paddling around, but you're going around in a circle,
mm,
because that's what happens.
yes,
Uh,
and then there's so much more to that piece that I
yeah,
did not perceive. It
there's
took me
so
two
much
more
more
years to
the
learn the
paddle.
piece.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in order for you to go into a straight line,
yeah,
you need to know the trick of what's going
exactly,
on with the paddle.
exactly. Um,
So, yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
yeah, so when Lubomir says you don't have to be a hotshot, I really want to emphasize this. I never had any dreams of being a concert pianist because for me, piano was always like a very minor hobby, something I always knew I wasn't good at, but I probably should continue to do because it's probably good for me, maybe. Like it was a really small thing in my life, and now it's one of the biggest components of my life. I'm the joint head of my college music society. I play concerts, all concerts of Lubomir's music. I have like a music scholarship now, and I'm extremely passionate, but all of that came from essentially square zero. Like
Yeah.
I had nothing.
And I would say I would um, just like to point out about the book which you're showing because I don't want people to run off buying that book. Um, that book was created under a false kind of uh, idea that is presented that it would actually be physically in shot. Like I did not want to make the book because I know that if you uh, just like you did, Nathan, just
Mm,
go in, start playing it, yeah, you'll manage something, but basically, so much of your control and concept are missing,
hmm
and they be put on the page. They have to be acquired from somebody
Yes.
has to tell you about them.
But if you
So
do buy this book, you should buy it with a certain humility and
yeah,
learn
I
it
would
and then
say
take lessons. And
don't buy it. It's better that they contact me and get scores that are suited for starting. Okay, and later on they can get it after if they want to. But uh, it's also I have a difficult time with erased tapes because when people buy the book is very expensive,
it
and
is
I get
£40.
practically nothing. All that money goes to the label. So people think, oh, I'm supporting Lubomyr's music by getting the book. You're not supporting my music, unfortunately. Should be that way, but it isn't.
It's always the way of publishing.
Yeah. So anyway, back. I'd like to get back because I need to not lose track. I'll forget about the introduction of of how this music got discovered.
Hmm.
You can see looking at me that I'm an old hippie, and uh, I'm not 100% hippie. Let's put it this way: I probably would have been thrown out of all the hippie communities had I joined any of them eventually, because and basically I studied philosophy at university
Yes.
and went quite far into the master's level. So, and I was very passionately interested in philosophy and in music. And eventually I realized that they are the same thing. And well, maybe not the same thing, but they're really very, very, very close. And Beethoven would never have said that, and I don't think the others would have said it, although he may have. Um, I think perhaps in the finale of the Ninth Symphony, in the Ode to Joy, there was a philosophical ring that maybe finally he, given the restrictions of the sort of the classical mentality of his time, let's say in 1805, uh, you wouldn't bring philosophy much into music. But Haydn, for example, in the Seven Last Words of Christ, or in the Creation, well, especially in the Seven Last Words of Christ, actually united theosophy or the philosophy, the philosophical depiction of God's unity with us in music. So this idea of philosophy and music, they, you know, they do tend to be joined, and Wagner's music as well. But anyway, let's not go there. Let's just stick with the continuous music. So um, I had a little bit of sort of typical hippie stuff, but it was a very, very short lived. I've kept this, my hair and the beard. I really don't know why. So let's not talk about that. It has nothing to do with sort of, oh, I'm a hippie. I'm not a
Well,
hippie.
the beard is amazing. All of my friends like it. You should keep it.
Good to know. I'm glad to hear. Now the thing is that I was living in Paris and I had no money at all, like literally no. I had no food. So I was gradually slowly starving to death. Like I weighed very. So in that state of, I guess, fasting would be the word. I was also able to have access to a piano. When I started, I was working with the Carolyn Carlson Dance Company, creating music during her master classes. So I had to create music that would fit
Mm.
philosophically, spiritually, and somewhat emotionally.
And for those who don't know, Carolyn is an extremely accomplished and kind of respected ballet dancer. And she's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
alive, and
she's,
she's a big
yeah,
name.
she's a complete phenomenon of in the dance world. There has never been anyone to even compare to her.
Mm.
She's a transcendent energy. Like to have seen her live, she will make a movement as fast as those animals that shoot their tongue out to catch a fly. Like
Mm.
your eye cannot see it. She could move faster than the eye could see. She is no dancer has been able to do that. She's not a ballet dancer. She's a phenomenon, and her classes were quite phenomenal. They're at the Paris Opera, and so we were up on the attic, which is a huge. It was the whole full attic of the Paris Opera, and so the dancers would go through. She would describe a spiritual, metaphysical thing about their body doing these movements, and so my music would start to do that. And of course, at that time, uh, you realize that so what we call ambient music was called minimalism back in like 1967, 68, etc.,
Yeah.
etc., like that. And uh, I was uh, with the hippies. It broke ground completely. Like it just shattered all the known boundaries of music. People don't understand what it was like in 1969 for the first time on earth to have heard, for example, like Terry Riley's In C,
Yeah.
or
You've mentioned in C a lot as an
yeah,
inspiration.
and tubular bells, which came out of UK back around 71, 72, I think, or something like that. These were phenomenal, just incredible things, and they really moved me deeply. And so I was doing something similar like that on the piano, and wanted to combine the classical element with this. And at that time, had access where I lived, and I lived on the garrets, at the attic apartments in Paris on the top floor. It was, and I was given it for free because I had no money, and so I was sort of uh, babysit their child for a few hours a week, sit around, make sure nothing wrong happened, and so it was a very easy job. Um, and I also they had a piano, so I started playing on the piano, and of course I'm playing this music, and I'm starting to feel a new, strange, very new energy flowing through my arms, through my wrists, into my hand. And I'm listening to the piano, I'm listening to the sound, and the sound of the piano played like this became sort of like a psychedelic drawing, that was just living and changing, uh, morphing constantly into something else. It was phenomenal. Now, by the way, you have to understand that I was not taking any drugs whatsoever for years. Like it was very, very short, like maybe 2 years. Then that it was totally uninteresting, and I did not want to bother with that stuff. So when I'm saying I'm using this term hallucinogenic to describe the sound of the piano, uh, it's
Um,
not I was doing anything.
yes, and I have never taken anything whatsoever, and I'm not synesthetic. I don't have these kind of visual sound connections in the brain, and yet still when I play this music, sometimes visions do happen, and I cannot really explain that in a normal way. By the way, sorry, it has gotten dark in your room now. You
Yeah,
should
okay,
probably
I'll
turn on the
turn
light.
the light on. Yeah, okay,
And
thanks.
just to make one small comment so people don't misunderstand, although minimalism may or ambient music may have been an original motivation, it's quite wrong to say that this is minimalist music, what you do.
Yes,
Um,
definitely. It's really, it cannot be described in any musical terms that exist today. It's not romantic. It's not classical. It's not neoclassical. It's not
yes, I
ambient.
really struggle to describe to other
It,
people
it's
what I
uh,
do.
it's basically everything, all mixed together into this one world of piano. And so, getting just because I don't have much time left,
Sure.
I'm sorry. Like I want to keep this first meeting quite short. So, uh, the the thing was is that with this new focus on the sound of the piano that I'm hearing all these overtones, it's sort of, I guess, the closest one can describe it is like the Northern Lights.
Hmm.
The sound of the piano was just like Northern
But
Lights.
did
Me,
you see?
no, no, no. I don't. I'm trying to create an analogy, sort of like audio, like what
Right.
the Northern Lights create for us for our
I
eye.
ask because for me, I see stuff sometimes that could be described as like the Northern Lights.
yeah.
I have my eyes closed.
But
My
it's
eyes are
also,
closed, but I'm still seeing.
but there are of course many people in the world who've never seen the Northern Lights. So it's a limited analogy
Mm,
in terms of its small. But anyway, so and together with this new energy, that was the start. I realized, oh wow, this is really something.
mm,
This is something wonderful. So I started to devote myself completely to this. Well, I had no choice. There was no reason to play Bach, Beethoven. Right? I mean, I couldn't give concerts doing that, and this was, of course, the highest, most intense interest for me. This thing, and that's how the music started. And I felt. The more I did it, the greater the energy, the power of the energy grew and grew. And I will in later talks uh, will describe
mm.
miraculous things that people would find hard to believe that the piano will do. And but it's all because of the this road of continuous music, which is a very beautiful road. But I think the ultimate uh, goal for the pianist is to create something beautiful for herself, for himself, or for the audience, or well, of course, for both, for himself and for the audience. Uh, but it's not the only goal. There is also a self goal, a self development goal that you, as a human being, uh, through the piano, develop yourself and your mental capacities. Because one of the things that continuous music does is expand the mental capacity of the
Absolutely.
human being and the speed of your thinking. I know I don't speak fast. I speak fairly slowly, but um, that doesn't mean that when I don't play slowly.
Yeah.
So the mind works. You have to, as a continuous pianist, you start to control different dimensions of piano playing, which you don't really in classical music. In classical music, you do one thing, but you do it perfectly, and you
Yes,
do it
and that one
wonderfully.
thing has already been laid before you in the score
Yeah,
by
it's
the
been laid
composer.
before you, and the the sad thing is that I find the conservatories are not producing great pianists. They're producing great technicians, who can play the piece very brilliantly, but there's something missing.
Yes, you've said before that there have been no new masters since 1930 or something. I can't remember
Yeah,
what date you
it's,
gave. But
well, you can tell uh, the difference if you look at on YouTube. You can see performances by not Anton, Arthur Rubinstein, or Vladimir Horowitz, both of which, by the way, came from Ukraine as well. So, in fact, most of the all I would say almost all of the great classical musicians, the violinists, the cellists, and the pianists, all of them, and I mean probably like 95%, all came from Ukraine, all of them. So don't ask me why, because I can't answer that question, but it's still very interesting to note.
a small note on that: there's lots of people don't know that Ukraine, before more recent times, had a massive medieval culture, which is largely forgotten in the West. But once upon a time, Kiev was one of the largest, or was the largest city in Europe. So something like this is not so surprising.
But Nathan, I'm sadly have to end for now, but I would like to continue soon
Hmm.
again, and I hope that this short talk we had can lead people to realize that there is something beyond, playing this sonata really well or this piece very well. Um, there is another uh, road for pianists that will lead to a lot of self development. and in many different dimensions. And so hopefully uh, we'll all
Yes.
meet again.
Yes, yes. There's lots more I want to ask about things you've already said, but I guess if you don't have time, we should stop here.